This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl, Miriam Huaw.
Brought to you by Mint Mobile. Stay tuned for a special offer at the end of the show. Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Huaw, and today is Thursday, July 16th, 2026. And I've got the excellent Carl here with me from Radio Canada.
Haha.
How's it going, Carl?
Really good, Miriam. Thanks for having me today.
Fantastic. For those of you who don't know, I met Carl at Computex in Taipei recently, a couple of months back. And, we hit it off. And I was like, we need to get you on the show, right? As both Francophones, maybe we should do a French podcast at some point. I'm not sure if you're up for that, but
that would be awesome, actually.
Yeah. Let's talk about it. But anyway, I really want to talk to you about gaming today. And, my audience is more on the mobile side. And I want to kind of talk about the evolution of mobile gaming, like from Game Boy to PlayStation Portable or PSP to, the devices we have today, which are a lot of phones. People play games on their phones. There are some gaming phones out there on Android land, at least. And to, things like these handheld gaming machines, all the way from Nintendo stuff to the Steam and the, whatever, all the different Xbox, Ally, whatever they're called, all that stuff. And I'd be kind of curious to hear your thoughts on that. But also let's talk about Sony discontinuing discs and physical media and what that means. And without physical media, we can't read. It's hard to emulate, it's hard to make machines that emulate these old devices, which I think is what is half of the gaming industry, in my opinion, right? And why doesn't the gaming industry try to make revenue on that? Stuff like that. I want to talk about that. And then we'll talk about some news, folks. We have obviously Samsung's next week. I'll be in London for it. There's Google later in August and Apple after that. And we got some news and leaks and rumors. And actually, before we do, I just wanted to mention a quick couple of things from last week's show. Last week, I talked about these earbuds, the Nothing Ear 3A. This is the beautiful pink version. And one of the things I mentioned, and I didn't know because I was unboxing them on the show, and so I hadn't used them yet. My assumption that they have this feature where they have local storage on the buds and you can record on them, and I thought to myself, this is great. It's like a DJI Lav mic, right? Like you can just, even without having your phone around, you have your earbuds, you click on them, it's not at all what it is. So this is a correction.
Okay.
They record what you're listening to.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's interesting.
The ambient, like I thought it'd be the mic, but no, they record. So, and I don't know what the point of that. It stores them on the earbuds, and then you can, download that from the Nothing X app, which is their headphone configuration app, earphone, headphone. So I emailed them because, I'm pretty tight with them. And I was like, guys, you totally missed the boat. Like this is what we want. Like the things can record up to 2 hours, make them into lav mics. That'd be the best thing. With local storage, of course, anyhow. And then the other thing I wanted to point out is last week we talked about the MacBook Neo and my review. And in my photo for the review on hothardware.com is this mug. And, it says
mug.
Gender fluid, but you notice on the photo of the article that says fun fluid, because my editors decided that this was too controversial and they should edit it out.
Okay. Well,
so I just wanted to let you guys know that if you're confused, because a lot of you watch the show, see this mug on a regular basis, and you know what it says. I don't have two mugs. That's kind of where I was getting. It's a bit weird that they felt that they had to censor / edit that. Oh, well. Anyway, you draw your own conclusions. So Sony dropped discs or is dropping discs. What's your take on that?
It's interesting. It's interesting, Miriam, because at first I was like, well, I don't care, right? At first I was like, hey, you know what? I'm a user of digital copies. I've been downloading games for many years now. It's fast. It's, it's practical. You don't have to go to the store to pick them up. So I was like, what is the big deal? But then I started to think a little bit more and I was like, well, wait a minute. I used to, and, I'm also older, and I remember the time where, I was going to, GameStop or Best Buy, or and just buying your games and being there at the midnight launch because there is a new console or a new game that was coming out, and you buy the game and then you can share it with your little cousins or friends and stuff like that. So I'm like, wait, so now that means we won't be able to do that anymore. So, and basically what it means is that you buy a digital copy, you're only purchasing like a limited license, right? And it kind of hit me, and I'm like, you know what, that's not good for multiple reasons. So I mean, first of all, as you know, technology doesn't work always flawlessly. So that means, you can have issues with access to your library. The servers are down. The network's not working, or, there could be anything, right? So now what do? So you don't have access to that anymore. The biggest thing for me, something that really hit me, was last year. You probably know Ubisoft. French video game, bien sûr. French video game
big
company.
French publisher. Oh, French Quebec publisher.
Yeah, well, French from France, and then they moved to Quebec, and then became bigger. But they have a really good game called The Crew, which is a racing game. Mm-hmm. And they decided to remove, they call it delisted. So that means you remove it from the digital storefront, so no new buyers can get it. So we're like, okay, well, I got a copy. I'm good. I don't mind. I can play it later. But then they decided to shut down the servers. So then it was like, okay, well, I don't have access to the game at all. First of all, you pay for the game, and then you buy new items in the game. So all of that money, all of that investment is lost. So that's when I was like, okay, this is not good for multiple reasons. Like, when you talk about backward compatibility, for example, being able to play your game, 20 years from now won't be possible.
Right.
And that, I think, is a problem. I remember when the PS4 launched, it was a big thing because Xbox had announced that you needed to be always connected and online to play your game. It was checking your license to make sure that you were the owner. And back then it was crazy. It was something new. Nowadays, it's everywhere. But back then, I remember PlayStation doing an ad and say, "Hey, how do you share your games with your friends?" Étape numéro un, like the first step. And it was like, you see the person just sharing the copy, and it's like, that's it. You shared your copy, and that's it.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So you remember that same company now is taking a new stand and saying, no, you won't have access to physical copies anymore. We'll give you a code in the box. It's a little bit sad to see all that. So, yeah.
I think it's the end of an era. And I feel the same as you in a way. Initially, I'm like, yeah, so what? Like, I'm actually surprised that it didn't happen sooner, simply because my feeling, and I might be wrong because I don't buy games and play them very much, but my feeling was people download their games now. Like, it felt to me like, especially on mobile, you don't have an optical disc device, etc. Although the PSP was really cool with the UMD. Yeah. Here's the thing you have to understand, and Carl, I don't know if we ever talked about this when we were in Taiwan together, but I was a video game developer from the mid-90s all the way to about 2010.
We did talk about that. And I worked
on PC games first, and then console games. The consoles I worked on were a little bit of Sega Dreamcast, PlayStation 2, GameCube, Xbox Original, Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, PSP, and in the early days of iPhone, I did Wii, the original Wii with the hand controllers, but I never got beyond that on Nintendo, and I never got to the Xbox past the 360, and I never got to PlayStation 4, 5, right? And Vita as well. I was there kind of, I still worked at Sony when Vita was launched, but I never made a game for Vita. And in my later career, I was more on the technical kind of support side for developers. So I wasn't really making games as much as fixing problems. But all this to say that, even when I made Homeworld in 1999, the PC game, it came on a CD, right? In fact, I wrote the installer for the games. I mean, that's one of the many things. Cool. I wrote the audio engine for the games, but I did the installer myself. And the installer was, Wise or whatever, the standard installer back in those days on PC. But they wanted, Activision, our publisher, wanted to make sure it was copy protected, the disc. And they didn't want to do it in hardware. They just wanted me to come up with a software solution. So I actually made it so that you can crack it really easily. Like I made it so that, if you're just inserting the disk, like you make a copy of the disk, it won't work. Like, CD-ROM copy. But if you have access to a hex editor and you know what you're doing, it's really easy to, like, basically I left a cheat code in there. You can, but even then, what I'm trying to point out is that even in 1999, when that game was launched, the day we shipped the gold master of the CD, you had to download an update. You know what I'm saying? Like we had already fixed bugs that we couldn't put on the CD. And so you installed the CD, sure, that was most of the data. The data was the big part. But code-wise, the first thing it did is went to Activision servers and then downloaded an update, right?
Yeah.
And so then there were more updates after that. So this is back in 1999 on a PC. So my point is, I've accepted a long time ago that you install games by downloading something, right? Yeah. But I agree with you. Like, and I think young people are rediscovering that with cassettes and CDs and mini discs and Game Boy cartridges and, the physical chunkiness of like inserting something in a device. Like that's why I brought up the UMD and the PSP, because I worked on a launch title PSP, the Tony Hawk Remix 2, one of the first launch titles, right? And it was great. It was fun, but I had to learn the UMD because a lot of my work was low level audio related, disc access and stuff. And the UMD was amazing. Sony was so good at creating, too good in my opinion, because they made too many of them, formats. But physical formats were really cool. I still have some movies on UMD. I still have some, some games on UMD. I don't have a PSP, unfortunately, so I should probably go to eBay and get one at some point.
No, and I like what you just said. Like those physical discs are, if you're a collector, I think it's important to you, right? Like you can go back in time. And like you just said, I can go back and watch those old movies. I can go back. Oh, I don't have a PSP right now, but I can go get a PSP and then slot that UMD again and be able to play like I'm, 12-year-olds again, right? Like it's, so and, that is.
A lot of these games, especially like portable games and, the early consoles, there was no downloading extra data. There was no servers to connect to. Like now, of course, I think if starting with PlayStation 3, even 2, I say, and Xbox. Xbox was always, to be fair, folks, and I love the Xbox platform as much as I love the Sony platforms, because I did work for Sony at some point. Xbox, I felt, was the original, was so close to a PC that coming from a PC developer myself, it was so much easier to work with than PlayStation 2 or GameCube. And I have to say that they just basically took a PC and made it into a console. Essentially, I mean, it was different architecture.
I think it was running. It was running
a Power PC, so very different. But I'm just saying, in terms of coding for it, it was essentially DirectX adapted to the Xbox.
That's it.
So it made it really easy. But all I'm trying to say is that, even starting then, there was some downloadable stuff, and so portable devices like GameCube, PSP, there wasn't as much going to the cloud and getting stuff. And I love what I'm seeing right now. Like all these emulators, all these hardware machines that are literally Game Boy clones. That's bringing these games back to a whole new audience. And I don't understand why the publishers, instead of fighting it like Nintendo is, or trying and losing, obviously. But instead of fighting it, why don't you republish these cartridges? And even the hardware. Like, it would cost you could literally make a Game Boy today with an ISO display and everything for $10 and sell it for $19 at the 7-Eleven. You know what I'm saying? And then charge for the cartridges. And make the cartridges compatible so that if we find an old game on eBay, we can play it in that box. Like, to me, that just, like, reissue, like I bet you laziness will prevail, and if you reissue the games for $9.99 a pop in a cartridge, like people will just buy them. Like
people will buy them.
It's just easier than going hunting at your thrift store or whatever. Like when I worked for LucasArts, right? In the early 2000s, the iPod got games. Remember, this is before the iPhone. The iPod you could make games for the iPod. And I pitched the executive team, the higher ups, like not George Lucas, but like the people who ran LucasArts. I said, guys, we should reissue all of the old LucasArts titles for the iPod. And they didn't get it. They couldn't see it. And I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, we could do this in an afternoon. It's trivial. Like, there's so much compute power on the iPod compared to the PCs the LucasArts games ran on. It would be so easy. All we have to come up with is a way to navigate with a jog wheel or a scroll wheel.
Yeah.
Game publishers are just not, like, even the studios, they just don't get it, in my opinion. And certainly, the Nintendos and Sonys of the world.
But I think the problem is also the fact that, they're public companies. Their goal is to make revenue, right? And as much as possible. So they have to find ways to minimize. And I think that, when you think about it, printing a disc, or I know it's cheap, but it's still money to print the disc, to do the box or a cartridge. So, how much are they saving? What, maybe 45% of the
Look,
cost?
I get it. It makes more sense in today's world to have downloadable content all out. But it's also a double-edged sword, as you pointed out.
That's it. Exactly.
And that's my concern, is that I'm hoping that in the way we have the Wayback Machines and people are archiving the internet and archiving, I'm hoping that somebody's snapshotting an image of these discs and these downloadable, DRM'd files. And eventually, with enough compute, we'll crack the DRM. And eventually, somebody will be able to make an emulator for PS4, PS5, or whatever that runs on a handheld phone or something. Because the younger generations have to experience this stuff. And, even if it's not in a physical form factor, it doesn't matter. Like, it's nice, right? But that's already gone, right? Like, that's going away. But if we can at least maintain the historical significance of these products, some of them are crap, right? But some games really are incredible, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, preservation is key. Preservation is really key. We need to figure out a way to save. And it's interesting you brought the Wayback Machine, because I don't know if you heard of a company called Good Old Games. They're online, and they sell old PC games. Like, you cannot play them anymore. So they find a way to, emulate. It's not emulate. You actually you're able to buy a copy of the game from these guys, and then you can play the games the same way. And then obviously it emulates the machine back then, so you're able to play the game. So you can play them in a more up to date machine, if that makes sense. But that is awesome. Like, you'll see more of that. So I have a son. He's 12 years old. And he's big into Pokemon. And he's like, Dad, I want to play your old Pokemon games that you used to play on your DS. And I was like, sorry, I don't have a DS anymore. I don't know where we can find that. And then we found, and we can talk about mobile games now, which is cool, is that you can find those emulators and being able to play old school games. And yes, you don't have the cartridge. It's unfortunate, but you can still experience what, and it's the same gameplay, the same thing exactly.
And I mean, even if you don't have the cartridges, you can put them on SD cards or whatever, right? Like, there's always a way to do it. And two things came to mind when you were talking. Number one, I saw an article, I'll try to find it and put it in the show notes, about DIYer. Those SATA carts that you can just put a hard drive into?
Yes.
Clunk
100%.
And okay. So he found some cheap SSDs out there. Like, I know it's hard right now, but really old enterprise, worn out 128 gigabyte SSDs. And he put them in these SATA adapters. So he could clunk them into a SATA dock on his computer. And he put separate Steam games on each cartridge.
That's awesome.
So that, you can clunk, and then, you get that physicalness of, instead of installing a Steam game and on your local storage, terabyte, whatever you have, SSD, you clunk it onto the dock. And today I'm going to play, whatever. and I thought that was cool. The second thought I had was around, what you said with emulation. Like, my producer, Theo, you met them. They play Civilization 3 on an old MacBook Air 11-inch, like an Intel 11-inch Air. But because that does not run on Intel Macs, it runs on PowerPC Macs. I've made a virtual machine, that runs Tiger, I think, or Leopard, like one of the PowerPC builds of Mac OS. So that they click on the virtual machine, and it opens up and it automatically runs the game.
Brilliant.
The CD is a DMG image, a disk image sitting there, and it thinks it has the CD installed. It's amazing. And the best part is
brilliant.
That's all they do on the computer. The computer has no other app than the VMware virtual machine running. And then it goes into another version of macOS to run Civilization 3. And I think the fact that we can do that reliably is exactly what you're talking about. So when it comes to mobile, like from Game Boy and PSP to, and like all the different Game Boys, right? DS and all that. We've gone to, PSP Vita, but now we have these, I make this gesture for those of you watching on Patreon. I'm making the gesture of holding one of those, dedicated
big
gaming PC based gaming machines, like the Steam machine or the Valve, Steam whatever Deck, it's called, or the Xbox Ally from Asus. You know those things. MSI makes them too, and Lenovo does too.
Yeah. The clock.
What's your take on where we're at? Of course, there's phones too, right? Like Red Magic, I reviewed the phones. Can you give us a snapshot of where the ecosystem is at, and where do you think the disruption's happening? Where do you think the hotness is happening right now?
So the big disruption right now is the Steam Deck, right? Because I think what happened is there was two things for the longest time. When you wanted to play video game, you have two choices. It's either you have your PC or console game, so in your living room, or if you play on the go, you have the DS, and everything else. But it was less powerful, different type of games. But now things are changing where the games that you can play in your living room, you can play it in your hands on a flight, on the bus, like basically on the go, which is really awesome. And all of that has changed with the Steam Deck. The Steam Deck came out, I think it was, I try to remember the date exactly, but when that came out, everybody was like, wow, like now I can install emulators on my Steam Deck.
Right.
Like it's basically a PC in your hand. Right. So other manufacturers decided, hey, you know what? There's something there because they were selling a lot, like hotcakes, right? Like, and obviously parts were cheaper back then. But now it's a different story. We can talk about that. But it's that's
a nightmare out there right now. Oh God.
It's craziness. But Asus came with the Ally. They partnered with Xbox and came out with the ROG Ally, and ROG Ally X, which is awesome. And and you mentioned it also, the Claw with the MSI and a few others. So it is, even though they're quite expensive, right? They're quite expensive machines.
Legion Go, right? That's the Lenovo one?
The Lenovo one is Legion Go. Yeah, exactly. So they're quite expensive, around like $900 to $1,000. So you're thinking, why would I pay that amount of money for a handheld where I can buy a laptop for way cheaper?
Well, you're getting kind of it's more compact. Like that's the thing. Like I think it's optimized for that purpose. And some of them have controls that slide out and have grips and stuff. Like I think it makes sense. Like, and $1,000 is not really that much when you consider what power it packs, right?
Exactly. It's actually a PC, right? So you can still do some work with it if you want it. Plug a keyboard and a mouse and then
and
off
a
you
monitor
go, right?
in your hotel room or something. Yeah.
Right. So, and off you go. So that's smaller than a laptop, but then you have a dedicated,
a pair of X-Rail glasses.
That's
it.
To go
crazy.
Yes, exactly. And actually, funny enough, you say that. I think is it Asus? Yeah, Asus with the ROG Ally. They
partnered. Yeah.
They launched the 25th anniversary of ROG, and they have a version of the Ally with the glasses. So you can plug the glasses and then have like 120-inch screens in front of your eye, which is quite awesome.
That was something we saw at Computex, actually. Yeah, we mentioned it on my podcast I recorded at the event. But look, you give it a good. So where do you think we're going? Like, do you think I think there's another part we should talk about, and that's kind of like this retro hardware that's coming out too, right? Like there is that company owned by Lucky Palmer, that dude that I don't want to have anything to do with, and I don't want to even suggest you should pay money to buy this product. But from everybody who's used it, it is absolutely superb as a product. It is a Game Boy clone that with modern hardware made out of metal and everything. But like devices like that, and I think there's a few others. Like, where do you think we're going with that? Because obviously, it's not public domain yet, but it should be, in my opinion, at this point. All of these Nintendo games, like I wish copyright law wouldn't last this long. Like they keep extending copyright law on content. It doesn't make sense to me. Like make some money for 10, 20 years. After that, it should go in the public domain, in my opinion, everything. Because, Nintendo is one of the culprits there. But I think, where do you think we're going with that? Like, of course, there's emulation on PC, like what we were talking about, where, Theo is playing Civilization 3 on their Mac. But do you think it's going to stratify? Do you think we're going to see a whole new market emerge out of that?
Yeah, big time. And before I go there, I just want to say, Lucky Pop, like we don't want to go too much into that, but I do have to say that before knowing everything, he brought us the Oculus Rift, right?
Of course,
he brought us a lot of great devices, and what he's doing right now, obviously, there's different opinion on that. But I do think that everything related to mobile, retro feel, like that retro look, people like to collect now, which is quite interesting.
Yeah.
And that's why, to go back to that discussion about PlayStation canceling physical disc, it's unfortunate because people like retro games. Like it's a thing. Like it is a lucrative business. You see a lot of stores and that run and sell old games and old console. So it is a little bit unfortunate. But yes, so I think that having those new type of devices that kind of emulate the old school, I think that is, you're going to see more and more of that. And also, I mean, again, even mobile, like traditional, like, phones that can play these old games or even new games. That is also like, so one thing that, because I don't know if people know, but mobile game is actually where the money at is.
Yeah, right now it's a huge thing, right?
It's I think it's like $112 or $114 billion annually.
Wow.
And the red, like console and PC is like not even half of that. So it's just to show you how mobile is a big business, and I think it's there to stay. And it's just going to be, I guess, fun to see all those different form factors happening. So yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, Microsoft has the Xbox partnership with Asus. Yeah. Do you think Sony's going to give us another PlayStation portable?
It's coming.
Yeah, I want that so bad.
Yeah, I am 110%. Like, obviously, I don't know anything, but I would.
Do you think it'll emulate PSP and Vita games, or do you think there's just going to be a completely new device?
It would be in their interest, a little bit like what Nintendo's doing right now, right? Like, if you have a Switch or a Switch 2, you can play old Nintendo games with, and I think that was smart on their part to do that. So you get access to some of their old catalog. I think that it would be a smart move for Sony to say, hey, you know what? This is the brand new, nice, shiny objects that you can have and play all the brand new games, the new God of War, etc. But you can also play the old PSP stuff. That would be nice.
I would love if Sony made it so that it emulates the old portable devices that they've made. Yeah. And I would love if you could take a photo of a UMD or or mail in your UMD or something. Like, I mean, that's a little much because collectors probably want to hang on to them. But if you can somehow provide a serial number, like some kind of verification process, and they send you a downloadable version of that game. Because the problem is this, right? Like, if you still have a PSP that works and UMD drive still works, that's a lot of ifs. You could potentially, like Sony could potentially put a little app on a memory stick, right? So it had memory stick too, that would validate that you have this game on UMD somehow, and then would send you a downloadable version of it for your new portable that you bought, the new shiny Sony PSP 5 or whatever it's going to be called, right? There's got to be something they can do there. I think that would be great. Probably you're right. It's probably simpler to just rebuy stuff or reissue it, kind of like Nintendo's doing with the Switch. But I secretly want these game companies to reissue their games in such a way that those who've already bought them can get them for a minor fee and not a full fee, or $0. And that I don't know if that's going to happen because, capitalism, but I feel like they owe their community this. Like, it's going to be a small percentage of the bigger picture, I think. So it's not going to be a big deal. And, delight in marketing is a very important thing, right? Like the reason, for example, we talked about a product from Lucky Palmer. Let's talk about a product from Elon Musk, Tesla, right? I still think they make the best EVs in North America. I've owned many of them. Would I do it again? Absolutely not. He's not getting my money. But here's the thing, folks. The delight you get from a software update sitting in your car that brings new features to your car for free is something you cannot underestimate. Rivian does it too, but the traditional car makers are not doing that. And it's not as much fun to drive an EV from a traditional car maker because you're not going to get that delightful experience. And that's why I think that these companies like Sony and Nintendo, well, Nintendo's doing it somewhat, but I think, Microsoft and Sony should really look into how can we delight our customers, still make some money, maintain the historical significance of the products that we made in the past. Like there's got to be a balance that can be found there, right? And I don't know how we do that, but I hope we get more mobile games beyond phones. I love the idea of a dedicated product like Red Magic. I brought it up. My Red Magic 11 Pro reviews on hothardware.com. I'll link it. It's been out for a few months. Every time I get a Red Magic phone, I'm delighted. It's great. Like the only thing that are always a bit iffy are software updates in the long run. Cameras are not going to be as good as your normal flagship, but in terms of raw horsepower, if you want the highest performance on an Android device, they're the only ones left. Like Asus has pulled out, the ROG phone's gone.
Yeah.
That's
and unfortunate.
Then Legion phones from Lenovo are gone too, or I haven't seen one recently. And so, they make tablets as well, Red Magic. So if you're an Android gamer, you have custom solutions. iPhone, of course, is really great at playing games, especially if you have a Pro Max. So
they have the content too, right? So if Apple Arcade is one thing that is interesting because you can have when you talk about mobile game like actual phone, one of the problem on the content side, I feel, is that there's a lot of ads and those games are built to extract money out of you, right? Like, and sometimes the game itself, the content is barely there.
But also casual games are a thing and we shouldn't, we shouldn't like throw that out the window. I feel like I see a lot of people just play literally games that are using one core on their 8-core CPU, right? Like there's nothing going on, right? And I know this because I was a game developer, and trust me, like you could run that stuff on a Pentium 4 or something. The point I'm making that's also bring us back to another thing, the last thing I want to talk about really, which is we can now play, like if you have a game like Homeworld, the game I made in 1999, it was optimized to run on essentially a Pentium at 133 megahertz, like basically not the base Pentium, but that's what it was targeted. Of course, if you had a Pentium 2 or 3, it was better. But we can emulate the crap out of that right now. Like you can literally run that. You could put that on your phone. Like you could 100%. Run a Pentium emulator on a modern smartphone, like a virtual machine, install that on there. And so what I'm saying is that there's a line that's been blurred between what we consider to be console, like PC living room games before that are now accessible on mobile. And I think that's another fascinating thing that's happening, right? It's like the emulation for Game Boy means that you can play a Game Boy game on your big TV now, of course, right? But the reverse is also true. And that's got me even more excited because this podcast is all about mobility and being on the go. And so what if you want to play like Theo's Civilization 3, the Mac version on your phone? Well, you can. And the input device is a challenge. Like this, they play with the trackpad and the mouse. So all you need is a pair of mouse to your phone, or maybe the touchscreen works well enough for that to work. So
you can pair controllers now. More and more, you can pair your controllers.
Well, Civilization 3 is not really a controller-based game. That's why I was like, I'm thinking that.
There's that too.
But you're right. You can pair all kinds of things. And that's my point. It's like, I think there's a whole untapped, kind of niche there as well that, you're starting to see it with people literally going to like thrift stores and buying like old 386 PCs and restoring them and actually putting Windows or whatever or DOS on them and running the games as intended. That's great. But I'm thinking, let's go mobile with that. Let's, It'd be really fun. Or if you're gonna want to have original hardware, find an old like Toshiba Portage laptop from 1999 and run
God.
Homeworld on it. You know, that's super OG.
But it's possible. Yeah.
The reason, by the way, we looked at that for Theo, we're like, well, we just need a PowerPC laptop, right? But the problem is all of the PowerPC laptops that are out there, the original, iBooks and
Can you find them?
PowerBooks are really hard to maintain, to find in good condition, and the batteries don't exist. And so this solution, it's like we're running a 15-year-old, MacBook Air with Intel here. But that thing, the batteries are still widely available because Theo likes to travel, right? So they bring two laptops. Yeah. They bring their main work MacBook Air, which is a modern M2, and then they bring the Intel, which is a super, it's the 11-inch, it's a super light, super thin, and that's their gaming machine, right? And I think that's super smart because then they can game while they watch TV on the other one, like kind of thing.
Exactly.
Set it all up on the desk in the hotel room, I think it's delightful. And that's kind of what I hope you guys can come away from this conversation with, is that there's a whole universe out there of things you can do that are not the obvious, PC console or mobile game that you think of. And I think, yes, it's inevitable we're going to lose physical media. It's sad that Sony's doing that, but it's also totally understandable. And we've been at it for, as I said, since at least the late 90s in the game industry, downloadable content in some way or another. So this is nothing new, and it was inevitable. At the same time, I really hope that it's not just hobbyists and DIYers that are preserving this stuff. We really need the industry to kind of step up, and do you think that's something we can advocate as journalists?
Do you think the government should be involved when it comes to preservation of content? Because I think it's been done in TV and movies. What do you think?
I think if you look at Canada, obviously, we have the National Film Board and all kinds of really cool programs. I think it's hard to do on a global scale. On a regional scale, it's possible. The US has bigger problems right now, and I don't really think that much is going to be happening on that end there. But I think Europe could probably mandate something. Canada could probably mandate something. But I also feel like this is like something the industry itself should feel responsible for and find a way to make it financially beneficial for them. Like, I think that we can do both. I think we can preserve and profit at the same time, somehow, without making it difficult for the customer and keeping the marketing delight level up. I think there's a way to do that. I don't know exactly how, but there is.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm sure there is. It's just about how do we bring all those big corporation to invest into this, right? Or is there a different or a new government body that takes internationally, right? Obviously in Canada, we can do it, and in the UK, etc. But it's interesting. I think that it is important. I hope we can, because right now we find ways, to save and to play these games, but it needs to be easier.
Maybe it stays grassroots, and the grassroots community continues to make the flame stay. But I think some help from the manufacturers, developers, studios, and publishers would be nice if they can pitch in some way. Let's move on to some other stuff. OnePlus is done for, it seems. Bloomberg published a story. 9to5 Google Ben Schoen, who's been on the show, who's a good friend of mine, published, has been following this story. I've been following it. You've been following it. It's inevitable. We knew it was coming. OnePlus is pulling out of the US and European markets, and will be pulling out of India even next year, even though they just launched some new phones we discussed last week, the N series. And they're going to be pulling everything back into China, potentially even leaving China. We're not sure. But right now, it's the end of OnePlus pretty much. And it's very sad because I really like their products. And I feel like they were bringing a legitimate bit of competition to the North American market, Canada, the US, that we just didn't have when we just had Apple, Samsung, Google, and Lenovo, which is really Motorola is Lenovo, which is really what we have left right now. I mean, Canada has a little bit more variety, right? But the reality is most people are on iPhones and Samsungs, maybe Googles, and every now and then you see a Razer or something. OnePlus was kind of the breath of fresh air, and I'm bummed. You?
They were the fun company too, right? They were the one. I thought they were different. It felt different. Even going to their events, and obviously I know not everybody can go to OnePlus events, but you could feel the energy. Right? And that was really, really cool. And then, they had a good product and that evolved. Obviously, it started slow and that product evolved. And I try to remember, is it, and maybe I'm wrong here, is Oppo, because Oppo is own OnePlus, right?
So it's complicated. Basically, in the old days, initially, OnePlus spawned out of Oppo. Pete Lau and Carl Pei were at Oppo. And they decided to create this sub-brand called OnePlus, which is kind of an enthusiast, affordable flagship, never settle kind of deal. Using essentially Oppo clones, like a lot of the early OnePlus phones also existed as Oppo phones in China and other markets. That back then, it wasn't as easy to get imported phones as it is today. This is like 15 years ago or something, right?
Yeah.
So that's how it started. And they had really unique marketing, and a lot of that I think was driven by Carl Pei, who's now at Nothing and running and created Nothing, which we talked about last week on the show about these earbuds and the phone that goes with it, the Phone 4B. They were kind of separate initially under the BBK Group umbrella. BBK Group kind of was like the umbrella company that owned Oppo and OnePlus, and then Realme got added to that. Realme was kind of initially competing with Redmi, which is a Xiaomi sub-brand that was sold online and was affordable and was targeting India primarily and developing markets. And so Realme came about to do that. But they're also kind of copies of Oppo phones in a way. But so this was all under a BBK Group. And then Vivo exists under BBK Group as well. But they had their own thing, their own software, their own. So over time, these things got rearranged. Oppo absorbed OnePlus, like I would say starting about 5 years ago. And then Realme, same thing. And then the software got unified across them. And then, right now it looks like Realme is dropping out of China and only focusing on foreign markets.
I heard that too.
OnePlus is ending and possibly ending even in China, but right now definitely in the West and then in India later next year. And Oppo's sticking around. So Vivo is still doing its own thing in its own silo. BBK Group above it has kind of been dissolved. And so Oppo is kind of like there's a company called O Plus as well, which I think is the umbrella now for, anyway, it's a mess. And I don't understand it fully. And somebody should research the stuff. All I'm trying to say is that I've been using Oppo phones since the COVID years, like 2020, 21. And I have to say that they're kind of like the pinnacle of what this group of companies can do, right? And then OnePlus used to fall right below and Realme used to fall below that. Then over time, OnePlus and Realme kind of equalized. Like Realme started making some really nice phones that were like almost as good as OnePlus, but Oppo was always superior. And, lately, since Carl Pei left, basically created Nothing, I feel like a lot of that magic around the marketing on all three brands kind of disappeared. And also,
big time.
Xiaomi does the same. And Xiaomi invented this. I call it part spinning, where basically you have bins of parts and you make phones by picking parts randomly out of the bins. Not randomly, it's strategic. But my point is, you see the same displays on different phones, but they're the same display. You see the same cameras on different phones, but they're the same cameras. But the phones are themselves different. They're different combination of the same parts. Xiaomi invented that. They have Xiaomi as a brand. They have Redmi and they have Poco. And then, of course, like BBK Group did the same with Oppo, OnePlus, and Realme. And, economies of scale, right? Like suppliers, factories, all that's shared. It makes a lot of sense. And that's why, you could see some phones that like, oh, this feature is from that phone and that. It's great. But it differentiated them enough that it made sense. The question was, they were never able to penetrate the North American market, OnePlus, enough to, they had partnership with the carriers for a little while with T-Mobile and Verizon, but it didn't work out. And it just feels like the magic left with Carl, even though, in my opinion, the best phones OnePlus ever made, the Open and the 13 were some of their more recent phones. It's like, I think the peak of OnePlus was OnePlus 7 Pro. And that was right around the time they have carrier partnerships with T-Mobile in the US. And, what's your experience been for that?
So, and the reason why I was asking the question is because I'm trying to figure out, like, why are they closing the brand, right? Like, is there a reason for that? Is there because Oppo is going to spread into all these categories and keep the Oppo brand instead? Is it a marketing thing, or is it just because
it's financials? I think,
right?
From what I understand, everybody's struggling with this RAM-mageddon or whatever you want, memory troubles and storage trouble, cost troubles.
Sure.
And Oppo is still going to focus on the high end of the market. OnePlus, I guess it doesn't make sense anymore for them to have the tiers anymore because it's harder and harder to make cheap phones right now. So that's the other problem, right? So Realme and OnePlus, like the Nord series for OnePlus was their affordable series, and that's not financially viable right now. And a lot of what Realme was doing isn't financially viable right now because they're making really affordable phones, like $250 phones that were basically as good as a $500 Pixel 10a. And they can't anymore. They can't. They just can't afford to do it anymore. Now everything has to be $500. And at that point, it doesn't work in markets like India. So I think that's the problem. And it's not just an Oppo group problem. It's also a Xiaomi group problem. Everybody's experiencing it. But I think that Pete Lau, the guy who started OnePlus with Carl, but is now running Oppo, was like, we need to kind of cut our losses somehow. And, Oppo is the most recognized brands across the most markets, including India.
Yes.
Realme is still doing okay, but I feel like Realme's days are also count. Like, I think it's only a matter of time right now. And that's okay. Like, honestly, I don't mind buying an Oppo instead of a OnePlus. I don't mind buying a Realme instead of one, or whatever ends up being, because the phones are all really great. The problem I have is that you can't buy them in Canada, you can't buy them in the US, you can't buy them in the UK. I mean, it's tough. Can, but you don't get support or warranty and the right bands and all that stuff, right? So
it becomes really complicated. So that's the reason why I was asking, because I'm like, okay, what is the real reason behind cancel? And that is the whole chip problem and the price rising for memory, etc. We talked about console earlier, but now with mobile, does that mean that the cheap phone doesn't exist anymore? Or the days are counted for affordable $200, $300 phone?
I think we're in trouble right now. I'm not sure if it's going to last. Like, I'm thinking there's going to be an end to this eventually. The AI bubble is going to burst, and there's going to be some reason coming back in, I hope. But I'm not sure. And as such, I think right now, what I've been saying to my audience is buy last year's phones, because this year's phones so far have been minor updates and the prices have almost doubled in some cases. So if you can find last year's model, you're not losing much and you're paying a lot less. And I mean, that $200 to $300 market, like nothing, I think we covered this on last week's or the previous week's podcast, nothing has dropped the CMF phone that they were making because they can't.
So there you go. Yeah.
They made this Nothing 4B phone, but it's more expensive. It's $400 instead of the last CMX phone was $279 in the US. And so it's not better. It's, so
worse,
you should buy last year's if you can still find it. It's exactly my point. Like, I think for a while, we're not going to get some really cheap phones. Now, a lot of my audience, is more tech savvy early adopters, and they'll spend the money and buy something that's $500 or more. But the reality is, for the people who buy prepaid phones that are on a very tight budget, this is devastating, and especially in developing countries. So I don't know. I think right now, if you need a phone, buy it now. Even if there's something shiny around the corner, like next week's event in Samsung in London, the prices. It should be very interesting to see on these folding phones next week. Like,
are they going to take the loss? Or are they just going to pass the price, right?
Because everybody's raising their prices right now. So why wouldn't they do that too, right? Yeah. And then we have a bunch of news. So I want to quickly go through that. Samsung has teased us officially with a new titanium hinge technology, which indicates that they're making the displays not only potentially creaseless, but also more durable. The inner folding displays on these folding phones, which, as you know, my audience knows this, that, if you drop a sharp object on a folding phone inside screen, you're very likely to damage it. They're trying to remedy this, and also to remedy the crease. Now, the Oppo Find N6, which I've been using as my main folding phone for a while, which just came out in March or something, has a creaseless display. So now the first thing I'll show you guys, for people here on Patreon, as you can see, like there is not much crease on this, and it's been in my pocket folded up most of the time. So, it's possible, and I think Samsung might even make it better. And we know Apple's not gonna accept a crease, and Apple uses Samsung displays. No. So the writing's on the wall. I think next week we're gonna get a creaseless phone, like this Oppo, or maybe better. There's a minor crease. You can still see it a bit, but like, let's see what Samsung is able to pull off. And that's the rumor, right? That this creaseless, at least one of them will be. I don't know if all of them will be. I think the Flip won't be, because I think the Flip is just going to be a chip upgrade, basically, at this point. And then, we're going to get some watches, and I don't know much about, again, I know nothing official here. This is all, speculation. So stay tuned for next week. I'm actually doing a podcast with my good friend, Michael Fisher, Mr. Mobile, on site in London. And we will have all the deets for you. So what are your thoughts on Samsung?
I was looking at the image of the thinness of the devices from the first fold to now, and how things are getting,
it's crazy, right?
With the inch now you see the camera bump. It's so thin. It's like, we used not to see it. Now you see it. It's interesting. But yeah, like I think that creaseless, foldable phone that's where we're going. It's interesting. I'm looking forward to hear what you're going and see what you're going to see over there in London.
I think the most exciting part is to see that since Apple is making a wide form factor, like a passport size,
like passport,
that and this is not new. Oppo's first folding style folding phone, the Find N, was like that. The Find N2 was like that. The N3 was the OnePlus Open, and it went to the normal form factor. And 5 and 6, they didn't do N4. They skipped 4 because the number 4 is bad luck in Chinese culture. So then, Samsung is making a wide phone because Apple is making a wide phone.
They follow each other.
The super thin phones last year, the Air, right? And Samsung came out first with a thin phone just before Apple last year, right? And they're going to do the same here with this Z Fold, whatever it's going to be called, wide or whatever, right? So it's going to be interesting. Like I'm genuinely excited. Not because I think Samsung makes the best folding phones. I think on the flip side, it's Moto. I think on the book style, it's definitely Oppo or Honor, in my opinion, that make the best, like thinnest, best cameras. This phone, right? Last year was almost the same, the N5. This is the N6. And it's the same thickness as last year. And, Samsung made the Fold 7 last year, and it was, everybody was like, oh, it's so thin, but it had no pen input. The cameras weren't that good. The battery life wasn't that good because it didn't use silicon carbon. This uses silicon carbon battery, has the Hasselblad cameras in the back, has, it's super thin. It has pen input on both displays. And last year's was the same. So my point is, Samsung is catching up. So let's see if they catch up even further. Do we get better batteries? Do we get pen input? Do we get a better camera system? That's what they need to improve. And right now, all the rumors are indicating it's very iterative. So don't get too excited. I think they're putting a lot of their eggs into the wide phone basket, Okay. So the other news we have is of course, we know that Google's Made by Google event is going to be, for the Pixels, going to be on August 12th in New York.
Yes.
But now the rumors are that they might be the first to ship a phone with a 2 nanometer chip, the Tensor G6. And we thought that would be Qualcomm or Apple with the A20. So who knows? At this point, because, the Snapdragon event in Hawaii has been announced to be September 22nd, 24. So what's going to happen is within a few weeks here, from whether it's true with Pixel here, we're going to get a 2 nanometer chip at some point. So,
100%. Yeah.
If they do that though, wow, tour de force for Google to be the first with 2 nanometer. And more importantly, I really hope as a Pixels user, my main phone's a Pixel, 10 Pro XL right now.
10 Pro? Okay.
Yeah, I hope that it can improve, both performance and battery life, because I always feel like, I always joke that, my captors treat me well, Stockholm syndrome, that's why I have a Pixel, because the performance really isn't there. Like, the cameras are good. It gets my work done. I love the software experience and the overall experience. And the hardware's gotten much better over the years, but I still don't feel like it's anything close to like a OnePlus or a Samsung or anything else that's running a Qualcomm chip in terms of like fluidity and experience. And I really hope that maybe they can finally break that spell. What's your take on that?
You never know. Yeah, you'll never know. That's going to be interesting to see. To be honest, I was not aware of that. So when I saw the announcement, I was like, "Oh wow, is it really going to happen? Are they really going to announce that?" So I don't know. I'm a little bit. How can I say that? I'm not completely sure where we're going with that and who's going to announce it first. But there will, for the next few weeks, for sure, there'll be a lot of exciting news that is going to keep us on our toes. That's for sure.
100%. We talked about Moto earlier, and Moto has joined the party of phones with built-in magnets for the Qi 2 wireless charging. This is exciting because, as you know, iPhones have had wireless magnetic MagSafe Qi. Well, Qi 2 is a standard that they contributed to, which was based on MagSafe. They've done this since the iPhone 12 series, and Samsung hasn't done it. Google finally did it last year with the Pixel 10 series. Yes. And HMD was actually the first to do it on one of their phones a year or two before that. Moto has just announced the Edge 70 Max in some markets, I believe in Europe. And that phone has magnets and has Qi 2 wireless charging as well. So this is the first of the Lenovo Moto group to have that. And it means that perhaps this is going to become a thing. And maybe our Razrs next year, our Moto Razrs, will have the magnets. I think, look, adding a case with magnets is fine. That's what I have on my Oppo phones, and it works great. But I think it should be built in. Not everybody wants to have a case on their phone. And I know that's kind of, a danger, a risk you take. But it's nice to have a phone without a case. And if you don't have magnets because you don't have a case with magnets, it sucks. I think every phone should have MagSafe. I think it should be a universal standard, especially on flagships. What's your take?
Yeah, I think it is supposed to be something that is built in and you can have on all the flagship phones. And, I think that's where we should go. I have a question for you though. Like you said, Nick, so do you put covers on your phone?
Yeah, I do. I'm not very dangerous with my phones. I'm very careful.
Yeah.
I don't generally drop them much, but I like to just think for that one time,
Okay, so you like the naked phones. Okay.
No, I don't. I have a case. I use cases. I prefer, ideally in an ideal world, I prefer to be naked, but it's not the day-to-day wear, like small, the patina. That's not what I'm worried about. It's I drop it on concrete and now I have this chipped corner that you can really notice. That's the part that really upsets me. And so that's why I put a case on it, because generally it's when you least expect it that you're going to drop it.
And that's true. And it's just unfortunate because sometimes you see, you have a phone that such a nice design and you're like, oh, love to enjoy this nice design. But then, hey, you have to slap that case on it.
So, my go-to is generally to use cases that are these aramid fiber. So this is my Find X9 Ultra with a magnetic case that I bought on Alibaba for like $30, right? But if you look carefully, for those of you watching on Patreon, it's a very thin, very nice case. And it protects it enough that if it falls, this will take the brunt of it. And I'm not too worried about the screen. I never put screen protectors. Generally, it's really I don't generally crack the screens. The drops that I do are generally minor drops, but it's bad enough to generally hit some material that will damage the finish. And that's my concern. If I drop it and the glass breaks, that was going to happen. That means that was a disaster. That means I went.
It's a big drop
above and beyond my normal wear and tear. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So let's see what happens with that. If Moto actually does it as a one-off on this phone, or if it continues on all their phones going forward, I really hope it does. It'd be nice. Not all maybe not the Moto G, but
the flagship
Edge,
ones.
Edge, Signature, Razr. Yeah. We've got a couple of phones that were announced this week that I want to point out that we now have officially some specs for and stuff. The Huawei Pura 90 Pro Max in China and 90S Pro Max in global markets is now officially out. And, it is the flagship camera phone from Huawei. I will link to Ben Sin's review. Ben Sin is an awesome YouTuber friend of mine. He's based in Hong Kong. He gets all the phones very early, has all the connections. And you should watch his video, folks. I'm not going to get into much detail here other than saying that, look, this seems to be a downgrade from last year's Pura 80 Ultra, which was their flagship, which had a dual mode telephoto where the sensor stayed, but the lens would shift from different magnification levels, and they've dropped that. And it's funny because Huawei seems to innovate and then take a step back the next year. And I don't know why they do that. And I mean, it doesn't matter. It's academic for us. We can't get these phones very easily, and they don't really run Google very well. So, but at the same time, it's just Huawei is such an innovator, and it's interesting to follow their stuff. So check out the Huawei Pura. What's your thought?
So I watched a video actually, and that review, and it was quite interesting to hear that, hey, you're introducing a feature, and in the next year you're removing that feature. It's not good for the customers because you get used to, it's like, hey, this is a brand new feature. This is great. So I know for a fact this is staying with us. And the next one, when I upgrade, I'm going to have that feature, but then that feature is not there anymore. So that was quite interesting to hear that. It's unfortunate. We'll see and then the name for North America adding the S. I was like,
I mean, it's for the rest of the world, like global market. It's really weird. They've never done that before. Like they've had global versions for years, and they're no different in hardware. It's very, very strange. And, as you probably know, those of you who follow Huawei, you can run micro G to get the Google mobile services equivalency so you can run the Google apps. But it's not everything works. Google Pay doesn't work. Android Auto doesn't work. There's a bunch of stuff that doesn't work. So just be aware of that if you decide to import a Huawei phone. Again, we say these phones aren't available, but they are. It's just how much are you willing to pay and how much trouble are you willing to put yourself through, especially if you need some maintenance on the phone in the future. The other phone that was announced this week, it's a series, is the Redmi Note 17. And the Note series from Redmi has always been like, in my reviews in the past, I've always said it's 80% of a flagship experience for 50% of the price. That's really what you get. It's like really, really great value. What's interesting, and the reason I brought this up, it's like lately in the last few years, they haven't been as exciting. But what's amazing about this is it's a 7-inch display. We've gone beyond 6.9 inch, okay? And 8,000 milliamp hour and 9,000 milliamp hour batteries, depending on the model, which, again, it's happened before. This is not a new thing. I have a Realme phone here that has a 10,000 milliamp hour battery and it's a normal thickness. So we know the Chinese have put silicon carbon batteries in their phones for a while, but at this price point, at this kind of like $500-$600 mid-ranges price point with the specs that this phone has, it's pretty impressive to have that big of a battery and fast charging and, the decent. And the Redmi Notes have always been great value. What have you ever played with one? What's your thoughts?
No, it's interesting to see all those innovation happening in China and different companies doing some great things. It's like, how can we get it here? I would love to have a phone like that has, at that price point, right? Like having all those features and being able to do so much, not that much when it comes to financial commitment, right? So it's interesting to see and how long it's going to take for those features to trickle down in North or rest of the world phones. So we'll see.
Yeah. So this, like the regular one is nothing to write home about. It's got a Snapdragon 4 Gen 4, which is really a basic entry level chip. But the Pro is the one you want to look at. Snapdragon 6S Gen 4, which is a mid-range chip, similar chip that's what's in the Nothing Phone 4B there that I showed last week. And then, the big battery, that big display, OLED, of course, 1.5K display, which is nice. And then, you get some decent cameras in the back, 50 megapixel main and some ultra wide, I think, on the Pro and a just a depth sensor or something on the regular. So yeah, I mean, and the prices, as you saw, they're really quite affordable.
Really affordable.
So, and that is Chinese prices.
Impressive.
So you can generally have $150 to $100 to get the rest of world, like India market price, for example, which is still cheaper than what's in Europe. But look, it's a China only for now. I just wanted to point it out so that because of the 7-inch display and the large batteries, because I haven't done that large yet on the Note series for Redmi. And then, there's a couple of more items we have here. We know more about the robot phone, which is supposed to launch on Q3, so very soon. The robot phone from Honor.
I don't think there's price. Any pricing or anything like that?
We don't know pricing. Right? All we know right now is that it's going to have a small display, 6.3 to 6.4 inches. So it's going to be quote unquote a small phone to today's standard.
Yes.
I'm kind of surprised by that. That seems off.
Yeah.
And then we have some specs for the camera. So the gimbal cam, which is the main cam with the wide angle regular cam, is 200 megapixel f1.6. And we have a 50 megapixel ultra wide and a 200 megapixel periscope telephoto. This is not going to be cheap, guys, especially with that gimbal. But it's so cool. Like, I don't know if you were at MWC when they or at CES when they showed it first, but
I saw it at CES. It was so cool to see that gimbal. It's awesome. Like, again, creativity. Like, that's what you want to see.
So let's see what happens, but keep an eye out because I think we're going to get more on the robot phone. I'm going to IFA in September. I wouldn't be surprised if Honor is at IFA doing something with that potentially. Oh yeah, and of course, I mean, especially in the current memory Ramageddon or whatever it's called.
More than a fold, you think?
It could be. It could be 2,000 euros. Yeah, I wouldn't put it past it, to be honest. The last thing we have is interesting simply because, we have seen a whole bunch of e-ink phones before. That's nothing new, right? Some of them are even available for sale in North America. But this Hisense is an e-ink Android phone. So kind of mostly designed for, reading books and stuff like that. And then to spice it up, as it were, to make it more exciting, they added a LCD that magnetically latches to the back of it. So thoughts?
Hey, at first I was like, cool, that's awesome. But then I think it's going to be sold separately. And I was like, oh no, no, put it in the box.
We don't know anything about the LCD other than it's a 5-inch LCD. We don't know if it's IPS. We don't know what the resolution is.
We don't know anything about it.
And the e-ink panel is 6.1 inch, which is pretty small. And typically these phones have large bezels. So,
Yeah.
But hey, look, it's interesting.
It's a cool concept. Yeah, I think it's going to be a cool concept. If you have money to spare, hey, why not?
And it reminds us, more importantly, something that we keep forgetting in the West, that Hisense doesn't just make TVs, they also make phones, just like TCL, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Well, there we go, folks. We've got the podcast all wrapped up with our good friend, Carl Edwin Michel of Radio-Canada. Thanks for being on the show. It's great.
Myriam, thank you for the invite. It was fun to discuss and have a chat about everything that is coming up and hot discussion about the gaming industry also. So thanks again. Hope we can do that again.
Absolutely. Where can folks find you on the internet? There's social media handles, of course, where your content is with Radio-Canada. Yes.
So you can find me on social media platform at Carl Edwin with a C, Carl Edwin. And yes, on Radio-Canada, I do radio and TV based in Toronto, Canada. So a lot of fun. So obviously, if you go on the Radio-Canada website, you can find all kinds of stuff on the tech section related to what I cover and my colleagues on everything tech. Yes.
Fantastic. So folks, follow Carl on the social. And if you're a francophone like we are, just go listen to his takes on the gaming world out there and en français.
We'll work on the French podcast. We should do that.
Yeah, we should talk about that. I think that needs to happen for Radio-Canada especially. It'd be great.
Exactly.
Folks, you know where to find me on the internet? I'm at Tankgirl, TNKGRL on all the platforms. It's like the comic book character Tankgirl without the vowels. The only platform where I have a slight different handle is TikTok because I couldn't get my handle. So add my year of birth, 6'9", to that. But I'm primarily active on Threads, Instagram, and Blue Sky. But I am on all platforms. So if you need to chat with me and Carl, ping us on social and, ask us questions, comments on the show, all that stuff. The show itself lives at mobiletechpodcast.com. There's an RSS feed there if you want to do the old school podcast subscription, but I'm on all the platforms. So you can find me on YouTube Music, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, everywhere good podcasts can be found. There is a youtube.com/mobiletechpodcast with some monthly videos. Probably the next one will be the one that I do at Samsung with my hands on the phones and watches. So stay tuned for that very soon. youtube.com/mobiletechpodcast. You know how YouTube works. Like, subscribe, tell your friends, click the bell, comment, all that good stuff. Finally, I mentioned it a few times throughout the show. There's a Patreon version of this podcast, which is a video version. You can get it every week, a day in advance for $5 a month. So consider supporting me on Patreon, patreon.com/TNKGRL, like my handle, Tankgirl without the vowels. And, again, it's sometimes a little longer because we go over time and I might leave some extra content. Sometimes there's bloopers. It's a little less edited too. So you might get a few more things like the FedEx person shows up with packages and we unbox them on the spot or whatever. So I encourage you to support me if you can with Patreon, patreon.com/TNKGRL. And I want to thank our sponsor, Mint Mobile. You know I review a lot of phones, so I'm constantly juggling multiple devices. While that's fun, it also means I'm spending a lot of money for wireless service on multiple SIMs. Thankfully, there's Mint Mobile, and that's who I'm teaming up with for today's podcast. If you want to save money on your wireless service, switch to Mint Mobile. You've probably seen the Mint Mobile ads featuring Ryan Reynolds, but let me quickly tell you how fantastic their service is, especially for tech-savvy early adopters like us. Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for as low as $15 a month, and you don't have to sacrifice any coverage, speed, or data. They're built on the nation's largest 5G network. They keep costs low because they sell direct to you online. They cut out the retail stores and salespeople. Why should you pay more than you have to for access to the same network? In my experience testing phones, Mint Mobile delivers the same data speeds and call quality as the big three for a fraction of the cost. Switching to Mint is super easy. Thanks to their eSIMs, you can sign up and activate immediately right on your phone from the comfort of your home. No more standing around waiting in line at a big wireless store. You can keep your current devices and phone number and easily switch services. And if your phone isn't eSIM compatible, Mint will ship you a new SIM card free of charge. The whole process only takes 15 minutes, and if you get stuck, Mint has a great customer service team to get you through it. All Mint Mobile plans include unlimited nationwide talk and text, plus lightning-fast 5G and free mobile hotspot. Mint will show you how much data you use each month and recommend plans that save you money. Mint also offers a modern family plan that lets you set up a super affordable family plan with as little as 2 lines. Use my link, mintmobile.com/mobiletech, to get premium wireless starting at $15 a month. Stop paying more than you need on your wireless bill and start saving big with Mint Mobile. And Carl, thanks again for being awesome and being on my show. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Folks, stay tuned. We'll have another podcast next week. I'll have Carl on again in the future, and hopefully we can get this French podcast off the ground.
Yes.
I'll be in London for Samsung next week. Until then, cheers, everybody.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank Girl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.